for the rebuild of the city.
I call the Honourable Member Dr Paul Hutchison.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to speak on the Prime Minister's Statement to Parliament 2013, because I've got great news for you. Great news for you.
Order.
I was listening to the member.
Thank you.
Apologies, Mr Speaker. I was reading the report of the Bay of Plenty District Health Board, and they pointed out to us at the Health Select Committee a little town, Te Kaha, on the east coast. In that lovely town, fairly isolated, unable to attract medical people very easily. They've got one GP, but some terrific nurse practitioners, and they reported that almost 100% of the population had their cervical screening coverage, had their breast screening coverage, and 100% of the 2-year-olds had had their immunisation coverage. That is outstanding, Mr Speaker, and 6 years ago, under a Labor government, that would have been less than 50%. 6 years ago, under a Labor government, it would have been less than 50%. It is an outstanding result in that small town. And, Mr Speaker, one of the reasons for this is that the Bay of Plenty DHB has gone to great trouble to ensure that there is flexibility in the way they employ their nurse practitioners. They've given them a great deal of opportunity to be able to not only do their routine work within the GP surgery, but also go out into the community to educate, to train, to carry out preventive medicine. And that's the sort of renaissance that has happened right throughout New Zealand under this national government, and did not happen under the Labor government, who only talked about it. And I want to reiterate the point that Simon Bridges and the Prime Minister made: 35,000 new operations every year. 35,000 more operations than there were 4 years ago under a Labor government. And, Mr Speaker, one of the things that has very much impressed me is that 5 years ago we heard time and time again of New Zealanders with cancer having to seek radiotherapy in Australia and elsewhere. Today, those patients are treated within 4 weeks in New Zealand. They don't have to undergo the huge wait, the emotional torture that they had under Labor. They are treated under gold standard best practice guidelines, world's best practice guidelines, here in New Zealand under a national government. And, Mr Speaker, there is much more that I can say that we could celebrate about our national health system. But I want to mention something somewhat sobering, and it's this: that since 1950, general expenditure has gone up 150%. But in health, it's gone up 442%. Absolutely unsustainable. Labor's contribution to that between 1999 and 2008 was 100%, doubling from 6 billion to 12 billion, with almost no increase in productivity, with huge waiting lists that they had to cull, with perpetual workforce problems. And, Mr Speaker, under the national government, we have seen a curbing of the increase in spending, which is absolutely vital to the sustainability of one of the most expensive areas of government spending. But we have continued to show magnificent results across a whole variety of areas in health. But, Mr Speaker, we see the 2014 general election looming, and we are going to have all sorts of promises from the Labor opposition. They're going to spend more, and they're going to say they're going to do more. And for that matter, the Greens are going to double what the Labor are going to do. And I was just quite fascinated to listen to the rhetoric of none other than Maturia Turia, the Greens co-leader, the other day. She's going to greenwash New Zealand. In fact, she is living on a planet. And her address, what was it called? State of the Planet address last Sunday, she contradicted herself all over the place, and from time to time she was just blatantly wrong. But oddly, there was one area that I was quite intrigued in, because she said this regarding the past. Together, they've given us a great school system, fine tertiary education, institutions, hospitals and community care, hydropower, road and trains, communications, the platform for individual achievements, innovation and entrepreneurship. Mrs. Turia, Mrs. Turia, the member has the national government to thank for all of that. At least she has one insight into the achievements of the national government. But I'm afraid to say, Mr. Speaker, she then reverted to her time-honoured, non-evidence-based traditional green shroud waving. She claimed, along with Labor, along with New Zealand First, along with the Mana Party, the assertion that over the last 4 years, 40,000 jobs have been lost in manufacturing. Well, this is absolutely diametrically opposed to what we learned from the Business Review. What they said was, data shows manufacturing crisis claims are utterly wrong. To have some of the reports seeping under the door of the opposition party's manufacturing inquiry, you would think the sector is at death's door. In fact, it's not doing so badly. And the author went on to say, the trouble is that although the 15 quarters since the beginning of 2009 showed a 25,800 drop in jobs, the previous 15 quarters shows a non-dissimilar drop, 22,500 jobs lost. That was well before the global economy went into a nosedive. And went on to say that the same story in all developed countries, and it's not just about exporting jobs to Asian countries, greater mechanisation and then computerisation is replacing jobs in traditional industries and newer services, and related industries are employing more people. And Mr. Speaker, I think it is really important to point out that here the national government has responded, and right as we speak is responding, in the creation of the Callaghan Innovation Centre, which is doing exactly what Labor has talked about for years but failed to do, and that is ensuring that the stream of ideas that we get from our universities, from our Crown research institutes and our private research institutes will indeed connect with business and be appropriately commercialised for the good of the New Zealand economy. And the Greens voted against it. Intriguingly, the Greens voted against it. And Mr. Speaker, as I speak here tonight, as a rural electorate MP, I see the grass in hectares around New Zealand, hundreds and thousands, turning to brown. National has just announced its irrigation policy, $400 million worth, and yet once again the Greens are voting against it. Absolutely vital for the future economy of New Zealand, absolutely vital for growth and jobs, absolutely vital so that we can afford first world health, first world education and first world social services.